Beyond the confines of our walled houses lies an unforgiving fortress, one that lets people in, but never out. The wilderness, brutal and hostile, consumes the unwary, and we're left with a persistent gnawing at the edges of our understanding. Number 10. It was the 18th of June, 1999, when Smiths Grove resident Walter Greg Fowler made a decision that he would come to regret. He opted to take the day off of work at Farmers Rural Electric in Glasgow for an impromptu fishing trip. Conflicting reports indicated that Walter had either called his employer himself or that someone else had called on his behalf. Which is true remains unconfirmed. Later that morning, his wife Deborah would help him load up his small aluminum boat, and that would be the last time she would ever see him. There were a few things particularly strange about Walter's sudden decision to take off from work for something like a fishing trip. For one, he rarely ever missed a day of work, and if he really needed to, he would call in well in advance, not the day of. According to those who knew the man, he also wasn't an avid fisherman. Though he was known to fish from time to time, Walter's interests lay more in golfing and hunting. This made his entire decision all the more eerie and uncharacteristic. Everyone who was concerned had the right to be, because the very next day, just a few miles outside Mammoth Cave National Park, lay Walter's boat, overturned and abandoned. Nearby on Osborne Ford Road was his vehicle and trailer, also abandoned and offering no clues as to what may have taken place there. The Kentucky man would never return from his fishing trip, sending ripples of concern washing over the community, affecting Deborah most of all. Deborah initially searched for her now missing husband alone, contacting family members and friends. When these individuals revealed that they hadn't seen or heard from him, though, she decided to report the matter to the police. But it hadn't been 24 hours yet, so they made her wait. With the report eventually being filed, state officials began to investigate. Their first course of action was to check the boat and the vehicle that would soon be found, and they found no overnight provisions. This was particularly strange, given that Walter was embarking on an overnight trip. His boat also had no engine or oars. Believing that the missing man met with foul play, the FBI became involved, ordering an extensive search of the river. Despite being thoroughly searched, the body of Walter was nowhere to be found. Then, with several agencies involved, new information began to rise to the surface, and with it, theories and speculation. Police would go on to discover that Walter and Deborah were $250,000 in debt at the time that he went missing. Several theories would ride on this very aspect of the case. Due to the fact that the man owed so much money, many began to believe that he may have staged his own disappearance. According to law enforcement, they received claims from alleged witnesses suggesting that the man is hiding in Mammoth Cave National Park, an allegation that is yet to be confirmed. With the reclassification of Walter's case into a homicide investigation, more theories arose. One would place Deborah at the center. Because she was allegedly the beneficiary of her husband's life insurance policy, some speculated she had something to do with the man's disappearance, allowing her to file a claim with the insurance. But she only learned of that policy in 2008. No evidence for any theories ever really were found, leaving Walter's case a mystery that endures. Number 9. M.N. was an experienced hiker who knew every single twisted trail of his workplace, the Shenandoah National Park. The man had been an avid hiker for quite some time, which made his sudden absence from the trails all the more disturbing. The Shenandoah Park is bursting with cascading waterfalls, breathtaking vistas, and lush wooded hollows. It spans over 200,000 acres of protected land, a haven for deer and black bear. But it also serves as a haven for secrets, strangeness, and the sinister. It was 1987 when the ranger failed to show up for work for a harrowing 2 days, ultimately leading to a 200-person volunteer group banding together in the reserve. They would set out in hopes of finding the missing ranger. Along the way, they encountered various clues that suggested they were on the right track. His pack, journal, empty containers, running shoes, and other items were discovered sporadically along the trails. The containers, empty pill bottles, were nothing dangerous, but could cause hallucinations if taken in excess. Beyond these first few items, the searchers could find nothing more. No footprints, no campfires, or signals for help. There was nothing. The search effort was scaled back, leaving only 50 volunteers interested. For the next few days, they came up empty-handed again. Other hikers and nature lovers were informed that there was an active search for a missing park ranger, prompting many to keep an eye out, but no one saw or heard anything. Just when all hope seemed lost, a father and his son, who'd been hiking, reported seeing MN on one of the hiking trails. He was wearing no boots, only socks, and heading south. This time, the volunteer group came back stronger, with almost 300 people scouring the park. But again, nothing of importance was found. Then, as if the universe was playing some sort of trick, hope was restored with the discovery of boots, pants, and a stick, items belonging to the missing man. But every time they got warmer, the coldness would seep in, and the searches proved futile. After a few more searches, the effort was called off. The volunteers resigned to the forces of nature, and MN was lost to the wilderness. Today, the mystery of the park ranger remains, with no immediate resolutions in sight, leaving everyone wondering what happened and why. Number 8. The Great Smoky Mountain National Park, ridge upon forest. The reserve straddles the North Carolina-Tennessee border, offering a diversity of plant and animal life. The remnants of the Appalachian mountain culture attract year-round visitors, as does the ancient mountain itself, making it the most visited national park in America. But with more visitors come more disappearances, the very fate that befell Derek Joseph Luking. It was the 15th of March 2012 when the 24-year-old failed to show up for work. He'd recently graduated from the local religious college in Tennessee and began working as a psych tech at the psychiatric hospital. After realizing that Derek hadn't shown up for work, his roommate, Ryan, would alert his family. He told them that he left the house the day prior and hadn't returned. When he failed to make an appearance that day too, he realized something was wrong. Ryan and Derek's family members checked his computer history and discovered he'd been searching for information on the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. He also looked at reservation options for a hotel. By tracking his purchases, they were able to establish that Derek, exhibiting a sudden interest in camping, began purchasing camping supplies in those days. He spent $1,000 at Bass Pro Shop, Coleman's, and another local store that stocks blades of various kinds. After having sounded the alarm to the police, an investigation would quickly yield some CCTV footage. The footage confirmed that he'd stayed at Microtel Inn and Suites in North Carolina and left the establishment at 4 a.m. on the 17th of March carrying a day pack. From there, they were able to piece together the previous days, discovering that on the 14th of March he'd stayed at Motel 6 and then headed to Smokemont Campground located within the park the following day, before heading to Microtel Hotel on the 16th and departing the next morning. The Luking family, overflowing with anxiety and fear, began driving around each of these areas, hoping to unearth more clues. The next trace of Derek they would find was his white Ford Escape. It had been parked in the Newfound Gap parking lot of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, an area that allows access to the Appalachian Trail. It was the site of the abandoned vehicle that would offer even more distressing conundrums. "Don't look for me," said an ominous note inside the car. Derek's wallet and keys were accompanying it. The note was not addressed to anyone in particular and could have been for anyone, family or park staff. In the rear of the Ford was a survival kit, including an axe, compass, lamp, pocket blade, tent, and a sleeping bag. There was also a black parachute, granola bars, a fire starter rod, flashlight, and pages from a military survival manual. The fact that Derek purchased each of these items, brought them with him, but left them behind, was a call for concern. This aspect posed a sinister thought. Perhaps Derek was interrupted as he was gathering his things, or maybe he chose to leave without them on purpose. 60 people and 3 search dog teams would come together in the search of the missing man, described by some as an impulsive individual. 70 miles worth of trails were explored, but no evidence of Derek was ever found. Number 7. Craig Lawrence Allen had been a resident of Fort Lauderdale, Florida for quite some time before 1993. He moved there in 1988 after graduating from the University of Maryland. In South Florida, he would assume a job as a computer analyst in Boca Raton and was making a fairly decent living. Craig wasn't too interested in dating anyone at the time, but he had a few close friends, most of whom were his former college roommates. It would be that year, though, that things began to take a particularly strange turn in the 30-year-old's life. The first peculiarity was that he quite randomly opted to convert from his Judaistic religious practice to become a fundamentalist Christian. In light of his new path, Craig would quit his well-paying job and begin to study the Bible, along with other religious books, including those on the 16th century French astrologer Nostradamus. By February, he'd placed all of his belongings into storage and began living on the streets, where he was declared homeless. The man would take up residence at local campgrounds and beaches, and things only got stranger from there. That year, Craig would head to Washington, D.C., where he would visit one of his old college friends. During the visit, he would make an unnerving assertion. He would claim that he was the Antichrist and pointed to several biblical passages alluding to this. According to the friend, Craig was visibly upset by the revelation. Following the visit, he would head back to Florida and continue his life on the streets. Occasionally, he was able to make contact with his family to let them know he was still okay. One day, though, those calls were about to stop. It was the 10th of August, 1993, when Craig headed to a dealership to sell his car for $4,600. 2 days later, he would chat with his mother on the phone, the very last time she would ever hear his voice. The man told her that she would not be hearing from him again, and that he wasn't going to tell her what he was going to do. On the 14th of August, the last sighting of Craig would place him somewhere within the unforgiving nature of the Everglades National Park, supposedly at one of the campgrounds he was known to frequent. This was the last time anyone would see the man, although the next day, he made a call to an unknown person for an unknown reason. After that, all of his credit card activity would stop, and his message service had been canceled. The case of Craig Allen remains hauntingly unresolved. Number 6. The great outdoors can be a magnificent escapade. At least, that's the experience of Susan Seymour Adams and her husband, Tom. The pair both enjoyed hiking trips and being in nature. The Austin, Texas couple would spend a great portion of 1990 thoroughly searching and planning a trip to Idaho County to head into the great unknown. They didn't know it at the time, but it would be the very last journey they would take together. On the 22nd of September, they arrived in Idaho and grouped with some hunters and guides from Iron Horse Outfitters. They headed into the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness, a protected area and the third largest wilderness in the lower 48. Bitterroot is dominated by great mountains, ridges, and granite peaks. It sees deep canyons and coniferous forests, low valleys, grass slopes, and long rivers. This reserve is also home to a great variety of wildlife, including elk, deer, moose, black bears, wolves, and mountain lions. With 1,800 miles worth of trails winding through the reserve, getting lost isn't difficult. There are several base camps found throughout the wilderness, allowing adventure seekers to remain outdoors for days on end. Susan and Tom were guided to the base that they'd be staying at for quite some time. At first, the trip was going as expected until 8 days later when an ill-fated decision came into play. Susan would be left alone at the site while her husband and the rest of the party embarked further into the wilderness for some hunting. That day, the 42-year-old woman would inform the chef, who remained at the camp, that she'd be going on a short hike into a nearby meadow. She wanted to go bird watching. Later that same day, Tom would arrive back only to find that his wife was gone. After being informed of her hike, he settled and waited. When evening drew in, though, Susan still hadn't returned, leaving the party visibly on edge. Tom headed to the nearby meadow, hoping to find her, following her footprints. But along the path, her footprints would abruptly stop, as though she'd vanished right on the spot. He informed the guides of what he had discovered, and the search was on. For the remainder of the evening, Susan's name was screamed into the void, hoping she would call back, but she didn't. At daybreak, the guides rode into town on horseback and brought the police back with them. Several search efforts were carried out but yielded no results. All they could find were the same prints seen by Tom. In place of an answer to the question, "Where is Susan Adams?" there were only theories, ones that took a sinister nature. The first idea was that the woman had simply become injured and disoriented. But that wouldn't explain the sudden end to her footprints. Other theories suggested animal attacks and alien abductions, but again, evidence was lacking. Susan seemed to have simply dissipated where she stood, disappearing into oblivion, leaving behind a chilling mystery and unanswered questions. Number 5. Wildlife of the Joshua Tree National Park thrives at temperatures well over 100 degrees. The reserve has been molded through millions of years of torrential rain and heavy wind. The rugged terrain encompasses over 800,000 acres, with landscapes that appear deceptively barren. The harsh conditions are no match for the plant and animal life that teems within Joshua Tree, and pose more of a risk to inexperienced visitors. The Joshua Tree National Park is certainly no reserve for a casual walk, yet this would be the adventure that would be the undoing of two Yucca Valley women. It was May of 1995 when 66-year-old June Cox and 73-year-old Lucy Trickey headed to the area. They were going on a routine walk, which they usually started at 7:30 in the morning, and would make their way back home by 9 a.m. But on this day, they wouldn't return. The absence of the pair was a call for concern and prompted immediate search efforts. The vehicle that was used to get to the park was found several miles within the main entrance, indicating that they never left the reserve, at least not with this particular car. The search and rescue team consisted of a canine unit, which failed to pick up on a solid scent and led rescue personnel to the whereabouts of June and Lucy. It was a futile effort. The women were gone without a trace, leaving only speculation and an eerie air in their wake. The community was left on edge by the ordeal. How could two regular walkers become so lost and not leave a single clue behind? It was certainly perplexing, and it turns out the community had a reason to be so concerned. Lucy's name may sound familiar to some. It was hers that appeared in several newspaper articles in connection with physician Dr. Carl Coppolino, the first person to ever be convicted of homicide by the use of a medicine that was used to relax the muscles of patients during operations. Coppolino supposedly intentionally took lives this way, including the life of his own wife. Lucy's connection to Coppolino was that they were both working in Riverview Hospital in Red Bank, New Jersey, where she would receive some incredibly threatening letters from the doctor. His aim was to coerce her into departing from the hospital. This incident occurred in 1962, leading to the doctor's arrest and prison sentence. But he was paroled in 1967 and is believed to have been alive at the time that the two women disappeared. Given the ominous connection that Lucy had to the criminal, many could only guess as to her fate. Despite this, investigators could find no evidence that pointed to his involvement. In fact, they could find no evidence of anything at all. It was as though the pair had simply disappeared, leaving no hints, items of clothing, or answers. The circumstances surrounding their disappearance remain unclear and unsettling, and continue to evade answers altogether. Number 4. It's in New South Wales, Australia, where the Great Dividing Range can be found, a section of which has been named the Blue Mountains. It consists of a dissected sandstone plateau, rising to almost 4,000 feet and sloping abruptly with the same drop measurement. Due to its rough terrain, suitable for only the most experienced, several people have gone missing here. Some, only to be found years later, are no longer alive or never to be seen again. But it doesn't appear to be Mother Nature behind these mysterious events, but rather something a lot more sinister. Whispers of homicides and serial slayings dominate the expanse, leaving many missing person cases to be investigated in such a way that they're considered body retrievals instead of search and rescues. Elizabeth O'Prey would find her eerie disappearance being analyzed in this very way, leaving heartbreak and concern gripping the family and community. The 77-year-old, a Medlow Bath resident, was reported missing in March of 2016. She'd left her home and disappeared into the wilderness, leaving fear in her wake. Bizarrely, there were a lot of initial clues and hope at the very start of this distressing event, allowing the family to relax, believing that Elizabeth would be found quickly. Unlike most disappearances, especially ones that take place in untamed wilderness, the missing woman was in contact with the police who were looking for her. She managed to get a hold of them just one day after she disappeared. She told the rescuers she was okay, but that she'd become disoriented and subsequently lost. Helicopters whirred overhead. Volunteers scaled the ground, and with each passing minute, Elizabeth's phone was losing battery power. By that Friday, the device had completely drained of life, and there were still no revelations. Without the communication from Elizabeth, investigators were left searching blindly. That day, at around 6:45 p.m., they would receive a phone call. It was from another Blue Mountains resident who had hope-sparking information. The resident claimed he could hear someone screaming for help. The voice seemed to be coming from the valley beneath Peckman's Plateau. Now, with a general location in mind, rescuers flocked to the area, helicopters circling for any signs of movement, and sniffer dogs working on the scent. Again, that hope was ripped away. There was nothing in the valley of Peckman's Plateau, and there were no signs of Elizabeth anywhere. The woman was known to frequent the Grand Canyon Road in Medlow Bath, as well as a small route that heads towards Katoomba. Despite having extensively searched these areas, there was nothing of her ever found. Number 3. It was the discovery of a lone vehicle and a bodiless shirt miles away from it that initiated a growing concern in Florida, as many began to fear the worst. It was Kyle Andrew Carl Epler who they were fearing for, and his abandoned shirt that would be found within the unfriendly terrain of the Everglades National Park, in one of the more dangerous areas, which has only one word to describe it: boggy. The day was the 29th of July, 1999, when Kyle's mother last saw her son in Naples, Florida. It was around 2 p.m. that day when he walked into her workplace, asking if he could borrow $20 for fuel. The 20-year-old told his mother that he'd be heading to his girlfriend's house and then headed to work at 4:30 p.m. for his shift, which was at the Grouper House, a restaurant. Kyle also told her that he'd be dropping off her dry cleaning. Eerily, the young man would never arrive at any of his intended destinations. He didn't show up at his girlfriend's house, he didn't show up for work, and he didn't run that errand for his mother. Kyle was never seen or heard from again. The next day, not knowing of her son's whereabouts, the mother reported him missing, and the hunt for Kyle Epler was on. Amid the efforts, the discovery of his silver 1988 Toyota Camry came. It had been abandoned in the Coastal Prairie Trail parking area in Flamingo, Florida, 3 hours away from home. This trail was the entrance to the aforementioned dangerous boggy area. Kyle's park receipt, strangely, was dated for the 28th of July, one day before he had disappeared. Also in the car was a bag full of clothing, a frame backpack, camping gear, peanut butter, crackers, and journals belonging to the missing man. 3 miles down the trail, a shirt. Kyle's mother noted that some of his belongings were missing from the home. This included his hiking boots and a navy blue hat with a white star on it that he was said to wear frequently. Kyle was a nature lover. He'd been studying zoology at Santa Fe College when he mysteriously disappeared under unclear circumstances. He was known to volunteer at the Humane Society and Animal Control, and worked at various snake farms from time to time. Upon departing his home that fateful day, the young man was leaving behind 2 dogs, a parrot, 5 lizards, and 7 turtles. Aside from his abandoned vehicle and shirt, no further clues as to Kyle's whereabouts would materialize, leaving his case dauntingly unsolved. Number 2. The wilderness can be disorienting. Hikers and adventure seekers can get lost even by venturing just a few steps away from the marked trails. Given the unevenness, unpaved and untamed nature of these national parks, getting injured isn't uncommon. The Shenandoah National Park is no stranger to such ordeals. The reserve, located in Virginia, has seen an abundance of disappearances. Sometimes the missing are found after extensive searches, or they remain lost forever, never to be seen again. For David Wayne Harding, it was the latter. The mystery began on the 27th of August, 2017, when the 62-year-old man left his Front Royal, Virginia home just under 2 miles away from Shenandoah National Park. He got into his vehicle, drove away from his property and into the unknown, where he would remain. The truck, a black 1999 Dodge Daytona pickup truck with a dent in the passenger side bed, and with the Virginia license plate number XMH6959, would disappear along with him, only to be discovered in Warren County abandoned and void of all clues, including any evidence of foul play. At the time he went missing, David was suffering from glaucoma, affecting one of his eyes. He required medication for this condition, but left without it that day. Given his condition, it would have been easy for him to become lost within the densely forested area. As police became aware of the absence of the Front Royal man, investigations quickly ensued. Believing that he'd become lost within the Shenandoah Mountains, the police would announce that they were temporarily closing the trails, preventing any disruption in their search. The search was large-scale and saw almost the whole park closing amid the efforts. Trail by trail, they searched and searched but found nothing. The hounds picked up no scents, and the helicopters spotted nothing unusual from above. David's whereabouts remained elusive. Not much is known about the missing man. Law enforcement never clarified if he was a hiker, hunter, or avid adventurer, nor did they say why they had any reason to believe that he was in the national park. They also couldn't seem to find any CCTV footage of David's vehicle making the drive to that eerie, secluded area, or how he may have gotten into the Shenandoah Mountains. Many questions circulate around this case, with very minimal information surfacing. Despite having released descriptive information and images of David, no useful tips have ever come in, and seemingly no one has spotted him since. Number 1. Missing 411s aren't only a thing of the 21st century. One of the earliest modern-era outdoor disappearances came in the late 1700s, and it concerned a founder of the first Kentucky settlement. In 1774, just a few months before Daniel Boone established Boonesboro, a Kentucky man named James Harrod would lend his name to the first permanent settlement, Harrodsburg, an act that would declare the Kentucky frontier open. Though it was the first of many, Harrod's act was a strong gesture that allowed for many opportunities. By 1792, Harrod, being its founder, was still living in Harrodsburg and wasn't unaccompanied. He married and bore a daughter, and it was here that the family would live happily until that very year when Kentucky was officially declared a state. By this time, it seemed that the founder had run into some legal troubles. He was indebted to many people. Knowing this, the man would have been wise to steer clear of meetups and mingling with the wrong crowds. Unfortunately, the warnings weren't too clear. In February, Harrod left the safety of his home with 2 companions, telling his wife he was going on a hunting trip with them. The 3 headed off into the wilderness, but only 2 of them would return. Those 2 were Michael Stoner and a mysterious figure known only as Bridges. When Anne Harrod found that her husband didn't return from the hunting trip, she decided to do some digging of her own and discovered something disturbing. The trip into the woods wasn't for hunting at all, but was instead to search for Jonathan Swift's silver mines, a job inaugurated by the mysterious Bridges, with whom Harrod was allegedly involved in a lawsuit. Regardless of this tension, the group embarked on this trip together. After the family and community were made aware of the trip's true intentions, they began to inquire about the missing man's whereabouts. According to Bridges, the group had become separated after setting up camp, during which Stoner would hear a bang. Later, the 2 reconvened at the camp, with the mystery man claiming to have seen fresh signs of Native Americans nearby. With no sign of Harrod, he believed that the Native Americans must have attacked him. Neither of the men, though, had witnessed the ordeal. Upon the return to Harrodsburg, Bridges would send a pair of silver cuffs to Anne, which were embroidered with the letter H. She instantly recognized it as belonging to her husband, but couldn't figure out how he must have gotten a hold of it if he hadn't seen Harrod after they had separated. Bridges would later be seen pawning off more silver buttons, believed to be those of Harrod's shirt. Following the revelations, a search party would embark on the same journey, hoping to uncover any signs of the missing founder. In a cave, they would come across a skeleton, wearing a shirt with missing buttons, but the remains were left behind and never identified as belonging to the missing man. The mysterious Bridges would vanish shortly thereafter before he could be thoroughly questioned. What happened to James Harrod on that false hunting trip cannot be known. Was it wild animals, Native Americans, an intentional disappearance, or was the peculiar man behind the inexplicable vanishing? Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.